I do have some noob questions for you because I know a lot of people. I've been using the term noob a lot because I've been playing Call of Duty a lot. So for a noobs, like means a newbie. So I'm gonna ask really simple questions like what's a float and what's let's say a warrant, right? Because I feel like people see low float, everyone assumes it's going to the moon, but like what does it actually mean to someone who wants to learn how share structure and all that kind of ties into plays?
Sure.
Like, what would you classify a low float? Like under, like I consider it like anything under 5 million. Sometimes tens pushing it depending on the vehicle.
So a float is so there's an important difference between a float and the company's outstanding shares. So every company out
Okay.
there has a number of outstanding shares, and what that simply means is the total number of shares issued and outstanding of the company. So that number, let's just use as an example of you know ABC as being 50 million. There's 50 million shares outstanding. Now, most of the time, the way a lot of these companies work is your insiders, your founders, your CEOs, your vice presidents, your early round investors. Obviously, they're going to have a pretty good bulk of shares, and if it's a decent, attractive company to investors, you'll also have some institutions in there. So a lot of times, if this example of ABC having 50 million shares outstanding, let's pretend that the CEO has, 20 million and the COO has 10 million and you have a round of, early investors or, whatever or the board of directors, whatever, has another 10 million. Well, if I just said the numbers that I think I said correctly, that's 40 million right there. That's taken.
Yep.
And now you're left, and
I have a
now you're left
calculator.
with 10 million. So if that,
Okay.
so comparing outstanding shares to the float, in that example, outstanding shares is 50 million and the float is only 10 million. The float is just the tradable amount of shares on the market, on the secondary market, the shares that we can trade.
Okay. So it's on Webull, Thinkorswim. The ones that we buy are the quote unquote
Yeah,
float,
those are
right?
part of the what's known as the tradable float, and that's where you get different varying degrees of volatility in certain stocks because you have $2. You have $2 companies and $200 companies that'll each have 100 million share floats. You also have $2 companies and $200 companies. Sorry, per share that have 10 and 20 million share floats, and that affects how they move a lot. I mean, you could there's expensive names out there that have small. Yeah,
MSTR. It's like 10 mil float and it's a $600-700 stock. It's a
that yeah,
Bitcoin name. That thing moves
that's a good
insane.
example. I was gonna say I think iRobot, the people who make your Roomba is one as well, unless I'm
Yep.
misremembering. But yeah, and those are now you're dealing with 50 cent or several or whole dollar or several dollar spreads, and that's a consequence of a small float. And if you're talking about a cheaper name, now you're talking about maybe 2, 3, 8, 12, 15 cent spreads. Um, I mean, shit, if this float's small enough and you got, your, ISIG, just, using a recent example of
Yeah.
of a small float that ran, I'm pretty sure that float is something like a million or a million and a half. That sometimes, sits around with 20, 30 cent spreads. So you have to understand also the risk that you're taking in playing these little floats. If you want to buy that and you're buying offers on a 20 cent spread and all of a sudden it doesn't work in your favor and now some bids have gotten whacked down, you could be 60, 70 cents out of the money in in a minute.